Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me, as always, on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, everywhere, Facebook, at Hawk Blogger. And we have a really special episode, one that I've been trying to get on the books for a while. Very busy man with important things to do. Sheil Kapadia is back with us on Hawk Blogger Mornings from The Ringer. Sheil, it is so great to have you. How are you doing on this Thursday?
Doing well. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Glad I could finally make it work. I wouldn't say important things, but a lot of nonsense taking up, whether it's family stuff or work stuff, a lot of nonsense taking up a lot of my days. But this is a good time to join you going into the final month of the season here.
It is. And, you know, for folks that don't remember, I mean, it was a big loss for Seahawks fans when you left the Seahawks beat and went back to Philly, like a hometown for you.
It is. Yes. Yeah. That's where I grew up.
And you grew up an Eagles fan. Is that right?
I grew up an Eagles fan. Yes.
So you went from covering, you went from Seattle back to Philly and covered the Eagles for a while. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. Did the Eagles for a few years and then went into a kind of a national thing with the Athletic and now with the Ringer here.
Well, so I've just started, joining the credentialed media this year in Seattle, and there's Sheil lore that still exists. I heard a story being told that this is by Brady Henderson. He said there was a guy who came in here like last few weeks of training camp to cover the team, and he predicted the 53-man roster, and he got it almost exactly right, while all the rest of us couldn't do it. Who was he talking about? I think it was you, Sheil.
I think it's maybe the only time in my career I've won that contest among the beat writers wherever I'm at to predict the roster. So yes, that was a little beginner's luck. But of course, Brady's the man. I remember sitting right next to him there at the VMAX. So yes, miss everyone there, and it was an awesome 2 years for me.
Well, part of the reason I wanted to have you on is because I was listening to one of the many podcasts you're on. You're on with Bill Simmons. And this was well ahead of the season. This was months ago. And I'm going to play for you and everyone else what I heard.
All right, number one, let's hear it.
Number one, I've got the Seattle Seahawks, which will surprise a lot of people.
I love it.
Every year when I do this exercise, I look and I say, who's going to be the surprise defense? There's going to be a team that jumps up from being terrible last year to top 5 this year. Last year, my guess were the Cleveland Browns, good guess, and the Carolina Panthers, terrible guess. So I don't always hit on all of them.
The gamut.
I've got the Seahawks as my number one pick this year, and for a couple reasons. One is you just look at their defense the last 5 years. I think Pete Carroll was a great head coach. He couldn't figure it out. He tried to adapt. He tried different coordinators. He tried different personnel. Their defense was either mediocre or terrible every season. So now you bring in Mike McDonald. And I hate buying all the way into the hype this time of year, but I can't find anyone to say a bad thing about the guy.
He did.
You go on. I could play probably another 10 minutes of that. It's quite fun to listen back to. And Sheila, as we look back now, like during the middle of the season, that looked like a very uncomfortable prediction. How are you feeling middle of the year with that?
Yeah, it's first of all, it's always still weird to hear your own voice. You know, I don't like to listen to my own interviews or podcast appearances, so that was a little jarring.
I'll just bring you on here to torch you as much as possible.
That's right. That's part of the podcast host's job. No, I do that exercise every summer, going into the season, ranking all the offenses, ranking all the defenses, and very nice of you to play the one that at least I'm in the ballpark for, because there are others that I was a complete disaster on. I think during that same interview, I predicted the Cowboys would have a good defense under Mike Zimmer. So thank you for not playing that one. I'm feeling pretty good. Obviously, I feel like early in the season, I was like, I'm feeling good. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm not feeling good. And now the last month of the season, the Seahawks have had one of the best defenses, as you know, in the entire NFL. So it's kind of followed that path a little bit that McDonald had in Baltimore, where early on, there's going to be some bumps in the road. It's a new scheme. You're dealing with new personnel. And in Seattle, it's not like he's just coaching the defense. He's doing a lot of different things, obviously, as a head coach. But I think you really have seen it in recent weeks. And like last week, those 2 interceptions against the Cardinals, the Ernest Jones one, in particular, like that just screamed great coaching to me. When you look at what they kind of did to set that up and what Kyler Murray is seeing as he's releasing the ball, and then Ernest Jones reading the route that's kind of at his back, turning around and picking it off. And like those 2 interceptions were the difference in that game, in my opinion. And so I think you're seeing a lot of those things come together and a lot of the talent on the defense finding their roles. And it's led to an exciting month here for the Seahawks.
Well, I remember when this first came out, it really stuck with me. I talked about it on my show because nobody was going out on the ledge of saying top 5. There were a lot of people saying, hey, Mike Macdonald's a good coach and should come in there and, maybe make a leap. I'll even throw you a little bit of additional. You were hard on yourself about the Panthers the previous year. When I did a show about which defenses have made the biggest jumps in rankings one year over, Evero made one of the biggest leaps. So the Panthers, even though they weren't a good defense, did make a big leap that year. When I look at the Seahawks now, since week 9, if you were to ask me what is the team that has the lowest percentage of drives resulting in points, it is the Seattle Seahawks. 25% of drives. The Saints are next, somewhat surprisingly, and then the Eagles, which I think everybody would know, and then the Lions. If I was to tell you what is the defense that is number 2 in the NFL in EPA per play in that time frame, it's the Seattle Seahawks. EPA per dropback, number 5. Rush EPA, number 3. Early down defense, number 1. So this isn't hyperbole at this point. This team is playing like it has a top 5 defense. How much of it do you think is sustainable? How much of it do you think is maybe specific to the teams that they were playing?
Yeah, defensive performance is always tough because I do think a lot of it comes down to, are you facing a good quarterback or a terrible quarterback? I mean, it's just, you got to adjust for that type of thing because obviously it's going to make a huge difference if you're facing Josh Allen versus, who do I want to throw under the bus? Will Levis, obviously. The team that faces Josh Allen should be expected to give up worse statistics in all those categories you just mentioned. So I do think that's a part of it, but that Cardinals offense had been playing well. That has been, by a lot of statistical measures, a top 10 offense this season. And the Seahawks faced them twice in the last month. And, that first time around, like no one had done that to the Cardinals, allowing, I think, was 6 points in that game. And then this last game was kind of a different script where the Cardinals were moving the football better than they did in that first game, but you still come up with the high leverage plays. So I do think it's sustainable. I don't know that they're going to just completely shut down teams. These next 2 weeks are going to be really interesting. I'm really excited about Sunday night, where I think these are 2 of the best schemers in the NFL, Matt LaFleur offensively and Mike Macdonald defensively. And I want to see what that looks like. So that's a bit of a measuring stick game. And then the next week, I would say the same thing about Kevin O'Connell. I don't know that there's an offensive coach in the NFL that's done a better job this season than Kevin O'Connell. So these are measuring stick games, but I don't think they're going to give up 35 points in either of these games. I think I've seen enough from their defense to think they're going to keep them competitive, keep them in these games, and give the offense a chance to steal it. So, I buy it. I think they're a legit defense right now. I think they're playing at a top 5 level, and we'll see how far that can carry them from now till when the playoffs start.
We're going to talk a little bit about that Packers matchup for sure, and the NFC West and what's going on there. Before we do that, I'm curious, you are obviously always going to be close to the Eagles and following that team closely. And that's another team that kind of found itself defensively this year. It didn't start off necessarily where it is now. They certainly added some personnel in the secondary that seemed to really help things. How do you compare and contrast these 2 defenses? What do they do differently?
I think there's a lot of similarities, actually, when I look at kind of the coverages and they're able to do different things on any given week. That I think you have to be flexible in the modern NFL. You don't want to be top 2 or 3 in playing in zone percentage, top 2 or 3 in man percentage. I think both of them, if they can, start those safeties deep and you can defend the run without committing a bunch of resources. I think both Vic Fangio, the Eagles defensive coordinator, and Mike Macdonald would like to do that. But maybe most importantly is you can watch players in coverage and get a grasp of, are they well coached? Do they know how to pass routes off, how to communicate. Do they have a sense for how the offense is trying to attack them? That's really what I see from both these defenses right now with those examples we mentioned earlier with the Seahawks against the Cardinals. And you see it on the Eagles film every week where they're starting 2 rookies back there, but man, they're pointing back and forth. Hey, here, I'm passing this off to you, type thing. Hey, look out for this crosser coming out behind you. And they're able to do that on a weekly basis. So I would say probably more similar than different in a lot of the things that they like to do. And again, I would say a lot of it starts with the guys calling the defense, probably 2 of the best defensive coaches in the league right now.
I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question, Sheil. All
okay.
right. So just want to prepare you for this. Jalen Carter and Devin Witherspoon were linked forever in Seahawks fans' minds in that draft. There was a lot of question about whether the Seahawks would take Jalen Carter number 5 overall, and a lot of people believe the reason he was passed on are reasons not to do with football. Now, if they were to do that draft over again and all 32 NFL GMs, could be merged into one, who do you think gets picked first?
So I'm gonna answer the question. I'm not dodging the question, with the caveat that we are at an information deficit with the off-field stuff with Jalen Carter. We know what's been reported, we know what we think, but it's just hard to gauge. I don't know, the Eagles internally, are they man, we have no worries about that? Or are they all right, we still got to keep an eye on it, but man, the film's been great. So I'll go ahead and assume that that part would be okay. I would say Jalen Carter would get picked before Devin Witherspoon. I think they're both fantastic players, and neither team would be unhappy with their pick. I do think that kind of disruptive defensive tackle is one of those positions that every team in the NFL wants to find a player like that could just kind of wreck a game, whether it's against the run or that interior pass rush. I remember when I was there covering Pete Carroll, and they drafted Malik McDowell, and he was just, talking about that this is the type of player that every team covets here. So I would say Jalen Carter, because I think he's got more ability to just wreck the game regardless of what the offense is doing. But if you're the Seahawks in that spot and you're saying we have questions about this stuff with one guy and not the other guy, and it's relatively close, then I totally understand making that pick. I mean, they weren't the only team that passed on Jalen Carter. And I actually remember when they passed on Jalen Carter, I was like, all right, that makes me think that there's legit worry there. Because I think the Seahawks are an organization where they'll live, especially at that time, they're we'll live with some of this stuff. We can manage this stuff. We've got a strong program, not worried about it. So when they passed on him, I'm like, oh, this might be even more serious than we think from the outside looking in. But to answer your question, I think Jalen Carter, I would give the slight nod to at this point in time.
I think just in positional value, how hard it is to find defensive tackles, I think that's right. I think the question will be in year 3, year 5, does the Albert Haynesworth emerge at some points in Jalen Carter's career? Don't know. But the other piece that I guess I'm curious about, since we're talking about you predicting the future, we're going to make you go back in the past and predict how things would have been potentially different for both franchises. If the Seahawks had selected Jalen Carter, specifically, I'm most interested, how do you think that would have affected the Eagles?
That's a good question. So if the Seahawks take Jalen Carter there, I'm trying to even think of who they were debating on at that time. I don't remember the draft order. They obviously wouldn't have ended up with Witherspoon. He would have gone, I think, probly
to the Lions. He would have gone to the Lions.
Yeah,
next.
He would have gone
and
to
I'm
the
not
Lions.
asking you to remember that draft class. Specifically, if the Eagles did not have Jalen Carter right now,
Gotcha.
how different would that defense be?
It would be very different, honestly, because they don't have the best pass rush or defensive line right now. He's the guy who's making everything go for them. They had some guys, Fletcher Cox retired from last year, Hassan Reddick, they traded to the Jets in in that weird story this season. But those were the guys. So this is actually a different Eagles team than the past in that they're built kind of with the coverage being the strength and the coverage doing enough to allow the pass rush to get home. Whereas kind of teams in the past, the organizational philosophy was always get the pass rush and that can help the coverage. So they wouldn't be as good. They might not be nearly as good. He has been that impactful for them, and they don't have a great replacement for him right now. So it's a good question, one I hadn't thought of, but yeah, he's definitely one of their top 5 most irreplaceable players on the entire team right now.
There's another player that is linked to Seattle, and like these two franchises have a lot. By the way, Fletcher Cox was a linked to Seattle. That was a pick that the Seahawks could have made. They traded out of, and Philadelphia benefited from that. But Cooper DeJean was a guy that there was pretty strong sources saying that the Seahawks were really considering him if Byron Murphy was not there, even at 16. Wow. If the Seahawks had somehow, or someone else had taken Cooper DeJean, how would that have affected what the Eagles defense has been this year?
That also would be a big deal. Like my thing in the summer, I always, when teams draft players and we do all this analysis in the summer, I always get annoyed when people are like, this team filled its holes because it drafted player X. And I'm like, rookies don't come in and just play well. Like sometimes they do, but that's not the norm. That's the exception. And so when people were saying that about the Eagles, they drafted Quinyon Mitchell in the first round, the corner, and then they draft Cooper DeJean in the second. And it's like, oh, look, they addressed their secondary. I'm like, maybe, like we have no idea if these guys can play. And even if they can play eventually, I don't know that they're going to be good as rookies, but DeJean's been awesome. Like it's been incredible. He was injured in the summer, and then he comes in, I think, around week 4 or 5, and it kind of transformed their defense. His ability to play slot corner for them. He's a great tackler. He's good against the run, and he's been a big upgrade for them at slot corner. So yeah, without him, their defense wasn't performing well the first month of the season before he stepped into the lineup. So that's another one. Certainly, among their 3 most valuable defenders on defense, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's an underrated storyline about especially the NFC this year, but teams that decided to go all in on a position group that was a weakness. For the Lions and the Eagles, it was secondary, right? They went after, whether it's trade, free agency, draft picks, they went and filled those spots. For the Rams, it was offensive line, and they doubled down, on 2 big guards. And I wonder with the Eagles, like I'm trying to recall, has there been a draft class that had 2 better corners as rookies that you can recall for any team?
Yeah, I can't. It's the exception. Like I said, I can't remember 2 guys playing this well. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell's been better than Cooper DeJean, for them. He's just been out there at outside corner playing at a really high level. So yeah, I guess sometimes, I mean, the draft is such a crapshoot, and I don't know that there are like teams that draft great and teams that don't draft great. There's such a randomness year to year. Like a couple of years ago, they drafted Jordan Davis at defensive tackle, 1 spot ahead of Kyle Hamilton. And Jordan Davis is like, a fine run stopping defensive tackle on first and second down, but he's not Kyle Hamilton. So sometimes, they drafted Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, 1 spot ahead, this very same regime. So it's like, there's such a randomness to it. And I know you've seen that in Seattle, but yeah, in terms of what those rookies have given them, they wouldn't be in this position without those 2 guys.
We're talking to Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer, and we started by having you recapping you predicting the future. We're now back to the present, and now I'm going to take you back to the future. So the Seahawks play this Sunday against the Packers. Sunday night football game. Packers come in 9-4, I believe, and the Seahawks are 8-5. What are you looking forward to in this matchup? You talked about Matt LaFleur and Mike McDonald. Let me start there. Just open-ended. What are you looking forward to in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, just how they're going to attack each other. That's going to be fun. Just like it might not be obvious live, or, maybe they'll point it out during the broadcast, but certainly looking at it after the game, that's going to be a fun film to watch. That what did McDonald think the strengths were of that Packers offense, and then how did Matt LaFleur react to it? But a big thing with the Packers this year is they're the most run-heavy team in the NFL on early downs. And so it's no secret what they want to do. And so now if you're the Seahawks, what do you do? How many resources do you commit to stopping the run? Is that your focus? Or do you not let them run, but do you say, hey, let's try to manage this without committing more resources to it, because we don't want Jordan Love to kind of carve us up downfield? Because that's really been how the Packers have played this season. Run the ball, be efficient in the run game, and then take your shots on kind of a lower volume in the passing game. So that is interesting to me. The early down runs in this game. There you go. You've got the chart right up there. I think that could tell the story of the game. You know, are the Seahawks able to stop them on early downs, or are the Packers and Josh Jacobs running the football effectively on early downs?
Well, not only do they run the ball most on early downs, but they are the most efficient running and passing team on early downs. Interestingly here, Sheil, I'm glad you brought this up. The Seahawks have been the second best early down defense since week 9. So you get this, you know, I talked to Mike McDonald yesterday about this, and you know, they've been heavily working on their early down package earlier in the week. That's where they spend a lot of their time, and they have specific things that they try to get done. But the other piece to this is these two guys haven't really faced each other. Mike McDonald said that maybe back when LaFleur was at Tennessee in 2018, they might have gone, but it's like certainly a shift since then. And people talk about LaFleur being a McVay guy, but he was kind of a Shanahan guy before he was a McVay guy. And when I look at that offense, it feels like its own thing a little bit. Like it takes pieces, but he seems like somebody who will pull from all sorts of places. Mike McDonald kind of said the same thing. He thinks he's his own coordinator. What's your take on him as an OC?
Yeah, I think he's done a fantastic job. I mean, it's one of those things where you look at the years with Aaron Rodgers, and everyone, and I probably fell into this, was not giving LaFleur a lot of credit because you're like, give me a break. You've got Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer. And since then, we've learned it might not have been the easiest thing to coach Aaron Rodgers during those years. So it's kind of like when Antonio Brown left the Steelers, and you're like, man, Mike Tomlin, what a job he must have done with Antonio Brown during those years. So I look back at those years now, and like, it's obviously hard to get through to a guy like Rodgers. I think there was reporting around that Rodgers wanted to play a specific way. LaFleur's like, please listen to me. Like, let's implement some other stuff, whether it's motion, whether it's under center play action, these different things that can help you. Rodgers was like, all right, we can do some of that. And then it leads to the guy winning 2 MVPs and them having great offenses. So that's one aspect that's been very impressive to me. The other one is just developing a young quarterback in Jordan Love. You know, he sits there, he waits, he watches. I don't think they were sure about him. And then he comes in and he plays at a really high level, and he's really a fun player to watch. So you look at those things, and I know LaFleur hasn't won the big one, but man, you look at regular season winning percentage. I forget what it is, but it's like easily one of the best of any of the active coaches in the entire NFL. So I think as an OC and as a head coach, he's one of the most underrated guys in the league. If you were Mike McDonald, how would you try to slow down that Packers offense? It's a good question. I still like, if you can prevent the explosive plays, and I know this is kind of like the philosophy around the NFL right now. And if you can stop the run without, you know, like I said, committing those extra resources on early downs, even if you give up a little here and there, that's probably how I would want to do. I would prioritize that, because Love is an ambitious passer. He will chuck the ball downfield. They want to take shots to Christian Watson, the other receivers. He is not shy about throwing the football into tight windows. And I think that would be how the game might get, if it were to get out of hand, it would be because he was producing those explosive plays. So I would do that. And then it's okay to play with a little bit of variance on third down, you know, be aggressive. Maybe you give one up, but can you produce a turnover? Because again, like I said, he's not shy. He's not a conservative passer. And so I think there are opportunities to take the ball away from Jordan Love. So that is one way I would kind of look at it, just with the overall approach. I came into this game, I admit, really just assuming the Packers were clearly a cut above the Seahawks, given what they've done like last year in the playoffs and coming into this year. And as I kind of dove deeper into this, they played, you know, when they played really good teams this year, when they played the Eagles, the Lions, the Vikings, those are 4 games that they've had this year. They're 0-4 in those games. They were good games, but they're 0-4 in those games. And I tried to look for their signature win that was like, oh yeah, this is a team that's pretty good, and they beat them. I mean, the 49ers were very, very beat up when they played them. I guess you could say the Rams, but the Rams were pretty beat up when they played them. You know, the Texans, but I'm not sure the Texans is that impressive of a win this year.
I don't know, like, is there anything that where you'd say like this is the point where you really saw the quality of the Packers this year?
They're actually a team I keep waiting on to reach another level. And I think it is
Mhm.
in there. Like if you told me they're going to go on a run the last month of the season and be a surprise team in the NFC playoffs, I would buy that. I actually had the Packers going to the Super Bowl in my preseason prediction. So I think that's still in there, but I am kind of with you that I sort of keep waiting. I don't think it's happened yet. Like I don't think they've put it all together where you say, all right, this is a team that looks like it's on the level of the elite teams in the NFL. So maybe that happens in the final month here. I think I'm with you. I haven't, that Lions game on Thursday night, they were kind of right there, obviously, in that game, and Campbell goes for it at the end. So they can go toe-to-toe with the heavyweights there. But defensively, I definitely still have questions about them. If you look at kind of their metrics defensively, they've really benefited from a lot of takeaways, which is great. Everybody likes takeaways. Defensive coaches, you've talked to defensive coaches, they love takeaways. But if you look at it on kind of a down-to-down basis, and like you can look at a stat like success rate, which just measures like, are you producing consistently or not? They're more middle of the pack or a below average defense, but they keep getting these takeaways. And so it kind of boosts up their defensive metrics. So I don't really trust their defense yet. I don't think it's a great defense. And I think if the Seahawks were to beat them on Sunday night, you'd probably be talking about a game where the Seahawks offense moved the ball efficiently, didn't turn the football over, and did enough to win a game in the fourth quarter.
I'm glad you brought up success rate because this was one of the things I was floored by when I was doing my research on the Packers. Their drop back success rate, 32nd. It's dead last in the NFL.
Wow.
I would not have guessed that. And as you're pointing out, their EPA is elevated quite a bit by the turnovers they had to start the year. As we talk about the other side of this matchup, Geno Smith, Ryan Grubb, that offensive line going against what's also a Packers defense that is toward the bottom. I think they're 29th in the league in pressure rate. They've had some challenges, stopping people through the air. They play a lot of zone. They've struggled to defend tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. What do you think if you were the Seahawks, where would you try to attack them? And do you think there's an advantage there that the Seahawks can exploit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, based on the numbers you just told me, you should be able to pass the football on them. I don't think they're great at any one thing. Now, the thing with the Seahawks, as was the case when I was covering the team 10 years ago, still the case now. We can just talk about the offensive line. Is it going to be good enough or not? And I know they made those changes up front, and that's been kind of another catalyst on a more smaller sample, I guess you would say. But like last week, they were obviously able to run the ball. The ball was coming out of Geno Smith's hands quickly. I think his average pass went 5-point-something yards last week. So it was kind of a lot of methodically move the football down the field, get rid of it. He doesn't take a sack. That type of approach might be able to work against this Packers team, and I think that helps your defense as well. You kind of limit the possessions that the Packers offense has. So I feel like you can pick your spots. You can carve up their zone coverage. There's going to be holes in their zone coverage where you can just move the ball efficiently down the field. Hope you're able to capitalize in the red zone there. And hopefully your offensive line does enough. To your point, the Packers pass rush has been like a disappointment. Like they've got some players there where you say like they should be better than they actually are, but I don't think they do a lot schematically to free guys up or to force the quarterback to hold on to the football and allow the pass rush to get home. So this should be on paper, at least, a game where you can move the ball efficiently with Geno Smith and those wide receivers.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the change in depth of target for Geno Smith in his last game. Coming into that game, he was toward like the middle of the pack. Around 10 to 12% of his passes were checkdowns. In that game against Arizona, he was third in the NFL in percentage of 30% of his passes were checkdowns.
Wow.
And so a very different profile of how he played. And the Seahawks have faced the number one rate of zone defense since week 9, like 75% of the coverages they're seeing are zone, which are going to ask for that kind of, take the underneath and take the yards after catch. Sheil, if I could grab you for a couple more minutes just to finish. Cool. So as we look at this game, if the Seahawks do manage to win this game, and I know I've already seen your picks against the spread, so I know where you are generally on this game, but if the Seahawks do come out on top, what will what will that imply? What will that state about who the Seahawks team is?
I think it probably, in my mind, would elevate them to a little more interesting as a play, maybe a surprise playoff team in the playoffs, as a team that maybe can make some noise than maybe I look at them right now. Like, I think they've overachieved. I think they've done a good job. I wouldn't have them in that top tier in the NFC just yet. A lot of it has to do with just, can this offensive, is this offensive line going to be good enough against kind of the top teams in the NFC? So that's where my hesitation comes in with the Seahawks. But if they beat, and I think they probably have to get one of the next two, against the Packers or I still think it's going to come down to week 18, Sunday night. That's going to be the matchup, Seahawks Rams, to determine the division. But that would be an impressive win, where all of a sudden the NFC looks a little bit more jumbled. The Eagles face the Steelers. They could lose that game. The Lions play the Bills. They could lose that game, where all of a sudden maybe we're looking at it and we're saying these tiers aren't so clear cut in the NFC, and maybe we're due for some more chaos in the playoffs than we think we are right now.
Do you think, in that regard, that you can learn more about the Seahawks team this week against the Packers or next week against the Vikings and that defense?
I think the Packers are a better team than the Vikings, and that might just be because I like Jordan Love at quarterback, and I sort of keep waiting for the Vikings to have some of these games where it kind of catches up to them, where all right, Sam Darnold's going to turn the football over a little bit and it might not look as good. But in terms of what you can learn about the Seahawks, you might be I know you weren't implying that, but just thinking about it, you might be able to learn more about them against the Vikings, because the Vikings are going to do 100 more things to you defensively than the Packers are going to do. It's going to be a very different week of game plan prep for Geno Smith next week than it is this week. So yeah, I would say probably just from a team perspective and what you're dealing with schematically, next week would probably tell you more.
Two last questions. Who do you think right now, with what you know, who do you give the advantage to win the NFC West?
I've got the Seahawks still. Like I said, I think it's going to come down maybe to week 18, but I feel like their defense is one of the maybe the most reliable unit in the division. The Rams offense, if they play their A game, that might be the best unit on any given week. I just don't know that they can do that week after week after week at this point with Matthew Stafford. Maybe they can, and they'll prove me wrong here, but I like the reliability of that Seahawks defense. I think the arrow is pointing upwards. And if they can just do enough to protect the quarterback and do enough to run the ball somewhat efficiently, I think that's going to be enough for them with this lead to give them the division.
All right, last one here. A question that will be coming down the road after the season. What do you think the Seahawks should do with Geno Smith in his last year of his contract and DK Metcalf in the last year of his contract?
Yeah, Geno, to me, I was looking at the quarterback contracts yesterday, and he's the only guy making between $13 million and $30 million per year. It's like a class that doesn't exist in the NFL. It's either you're getting paid as sort of a backup or a one-year starter, or you're getting paid, 30, 40, 50, $60 million per year. So I looked at the Baker Mayfield deal, where I think he's getting $33 million per year. Would Geno Smith take that deal? Or is he like, I'm better than Baker Mayfield, I want Kirk Cousins, who's making $45 billion per year? But I think that's the kind of neighborhood you're shopping in with Geno Smith. I would try to hold on to him for 2-3 years on a deal like that. I think he's 34 years old. I think he's an above average starter. And it's not like you have a young guy in the pipeline where you say, hey, we can let him walk because we drafted this player. So a lot of times we look at quarterback as either or. I don't look at it that way. Like, I think it's sign Geno Smith and then keep your eyes open in the draft. Maybe there's a guy in the second round who you say, we scouted him and we like him better than other teams, and you draft him. And now at least you have a little bit of a plan and you see what it looks like at the end of that. So that's what I would say with Geno Smith. And DK Metcalf, I'm generally just on the side of, if you drafted a player and they're producing and they're in their prime and they're at a premium position, you hold on to them. I think that's what good teams do. Now, I don't know everything. There's stuff behind the scenes that worries them. Is there injury stuff? I don't know. If that's the case, obviously you have to look at it. But the wide receiver contracts have skyrocketed. I don't even know what the number would be for a guy like DK Metcalf. But it's like, if you lose him, then where are you at wide receiver? Usually you need to have like three reliable pass catchers, and they're in such a good spot with DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba that I feel like you pay him, you hold on to him, and then you kind of try to draft the next guy and keep that thing going.
All right. Thank you to Sheil Kapadia. Tell folks what you've got coming up on the Ringer.
Yeah, you can check. I read a weekly column called Under Review, theringer.com, that comes out every Tuesday morning. And I definitely touch on the Seahawks from time to time in that column. So check that out if you're interested in reading it. And then we've got the Ringer NFL show 3 times a week, where, of course, we talk about the Seahawks all the time. And my co-host, Steven Ruiz, is probably the biggest Geno Smith fan on the internet. So if you want some positive Geno Smith affirmation, that's a good place to get it.
Well, everybody, that is Sheil Kapadia. He predicted the future about a top 5 Seahawks defense. Let's hope he predicted the future about a Seahawks division title. Thank you so much for coming on again, Sheil.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Good talking to you. Take care.
All right, everybody, that's Sheil Kapadia, a guy that you got to follow. One of the best out there. We get Robert Mays every week. I think Sheil is right in that category of just super smart, super well prepared, and knows the league really well. So really fun to catch back up with him, and a lot of good stuff there. One of the things I really respect about Sheil that's different than me, hopefully you know that by now, is it's very dispassionate, right? Like he loves the game, he enjoys it, but he's not coming from a fan perspective. He's just going to give you a pretty objective point of view. And so that's part of what perked my ears up this offseason when he did the top 5 defense. And if you remember, I did a show back then playing that sound, and Jeff Simmons and I talked about that sound. And when we went to training camp and I watched this defense play day in, day out, it's like, man, Reek Woolen looks like a true number 1 corner. Julian Love, the safeties look really good. The defensive line, it's a little hard to tell, but there's some pretty impressive stuff going on there. Derek Hall looks like he's much better than he was in year 1 and can be a help there. At that time, Uchenna Nwosu was also like a beast that was like maybe their best edge player, was healthy and playing well at that point. And it just seemed, and then you had Byron Murphy, who you had high hopes for. And I was like, I don't think it's crazy that this could be the best defense in the NFL. I think it's unlikely, but that might be the ceiling. And one of the things that people also, if you've listened to this show before, I did a show on rookie head coaches that were the youngest head coaches, or the first time that they were a head coach was in the NFL, and how did they do? And Sean McVay, who Mike Macdonald's been compared to so often, except he's on the offensive side and McDonald's on the defensive side. McVay took I think it was like a 32nd ranked offense the year before he arrived and made it the first ranked offense. Mike Macdonald's I don't think they'll end the year number 1. I think that seems very unlikely, but I think it's seeming increasingly likely that he's going to take a defense that was ranked in the 30s and get it into the top 10. That's not a common transformation. That's not something most people are able to do. And I think it really bodes well for where this team's trying to go down the road. And as Sheil and I were talking about, like the Eagles, the Eagles are going to get more attention than the Seahawks. That's just going to the nature of the beast with where they are, with the size of their fan base, with where the media is going to be focused. That's just always going to be the case, and that's fine. But I'm telling you, like the Seahawks a few weeks ago, the Seahawks were number 2 behind the Eagles in percentage of drives that resulted in points. Seahawks are number 1 now since week 9. So this is I think that is a very good barometer of how good a defense is. And it screens out like points per game. That includes when your quarterback throws a pick 6. That includes when your special teams gives up a kick return for a touchdown. Like it includes a lot of stuff that is not the defense's responsibility. So that's why I like this metric of how many drives from opponents are resulting in points. That's a pretty good barometer to me. And the Seahawks are the best in the NFL since week 9. So that to me is a really good indicator. Interestingly, let's take a look at which offenses have been most common to score per drive. All right, same time frame. So I'm not doing the full season, same time frame. The Bills are number 1, Dolphins 2, Lions 3, Chiefs 4, Packers 5. So you're going to get a team that is 5th in the NFL, scoring on 48.9% of their drives since week 9, against a team that is number 1 in the NFL defensively and limiting opponent drives to result in points, only 25.5% of drives. So Packers are scoring on 1 out of every 2 drives. Seahawks opponents have been scoring on 1 out of every 4 drives. So Packers are twice as frequently scoring as what the Seahawks have been allowing offenses to do. I think that's going to be something to really keep an eye on. And if I had, let's do this. Let me screen out the last week where the Cardinals were facing the Seahawks. I would bet the Cardinals were pretty high up there in that list as well. Yeah, so interesting. Prior to facing the Seahawks last week, this does include their 16-6 game, so that's included, but does not include the 30-18 win. The Cardinals were, I'm going to make sure I'm counting right, they were 6th. They were 6th in the NFL offensively in scoring drive, percentage of drives ending in points. They were at 48.9%. So what you've got here is a defense that already has shown they can take an offense that was scoring at that rate and limit them. The Cardinals, let's take a quick look. I've got this here somewhere. I've got my charting that I do after every single game. And so in this game, the Cardinals had 4 drives. They had 12 drives. I don't know why I said 4. They had 12 drives. And let's see how many of those resulted in points. I want to say 3, but I might be wrong. So let me take a quick look. So out of 12 drives against the Seahawks, the Cardinals scored on 1, 2, 3 drives. So by my quick math, 3 out of 12 is 25%. So the Seahawks defense took a offense that was scoring 49% of their drives and held them to 25% scoring on their drives. They're going to have to potentially do something like that again this week against a Packers offense that is very accustomed to moving the ball down the field, to putting points on the board. And as I mentioned in First Look yesterday, one of the quieter parts of the Packers is they have a real problem with their kicker. Their field goal game is not great. And they have, I'll pull it up right now so I make sure I'm looking at the right numbers. They rank 24th in the NFL in field goal accuracy, meaning that they've missed a lot of kicks. They rank 29th in the NFL in number of kicks over 50 yards. They only have 1 kick over 50 yards all season. So the reason that matters potentially in a game like this is if the Seahawks are able to slow them down, the Packers may be in more situations where they're going to have to consider kicking the football. Now, the weather forecast, I've talked about that a little yesterday. That's changed a bit. It doesn't look like it's going to rain, so it should be dry. It's going to be cold, but it should be dry, which is good. I mean, I'd rather see a dry game and just see how these teams face off. You're certainly not going to have any advantage over the Packers in a colder weather football game. So, if anything, maybe that's a little bit of an advantage to them. But I think the thing that happened yesterday, we'll find out today. And in fact, why don't I take a quick look here to see if I can get any of the latest from the Packers in terms of their injury situation. So they had a number of guys come back yesterday. So they had Javon Bullard is probably going to miss the game, but they got Evan Williams back. Jair Alexander was practicing. Edgerrin Cooper, their great rookie linebacker, was practicing. So yeah, they have a lot of guys coming back. I'm reading a tweet. Sorry. This is from a Packers writer. He says, this week for Packers feels very similar to the way I felt before the 49ers game, even before we knew they were going to be ravaged by injury. The things Green Bay does well fits congruently with where the Seahawks are weakest, especially on defense. Really? Okay, we'll find out, man. That's not how I read this. What the Packers do really well is on offense, they are really good at running in the middle, running down the middle. That's like they're one of the higher percentage running teams down the middle. They're very good on early downs. They are good at breaking tackles, both as pass catchers and as runners with Josh Jacobs. Seahawks are one of the best teams right now at defending middle runs in the NFL. The Seahawks are one of the best teams in general at defending the run right now. They are the second best team in defending early downs right now. I'm not sure how that's a weakness on the Seattle matching up with the strength of the Packers. I think that's more likely to be superficial evaluation of this game. On the other side of the ball, the Packers are best at defending the run. That's something that they're, I think, legitimately good at doing. The Seahawks have not been good at running the ball. So that I get but it's also been like the least percentage of the Seahawks offense of probably any team in the NFL. They have not been reliant on the run in order when they move the ball. A lot of it's been through the air. Well, Packers are 32nd in the NFL in success rate against the pass. So, and they have one of the weakest pass rushes in the NFL. So I'm always open to listening and learning. I'm not sure I see where they have a real, very clear and defined strength going against a Seahawks weakness. I do think I see that the other way. I do think I see a chance for the Seahawks offense to have some true mismatches against the Packers defense. I think the Seahawks offense is incredibly unreliable right now. It is very hard to confidently predict anything about what they do or will do. But based on what I've seen so far, I feel like there's a more predictable advantage there for the Seahawks than there is at any position, like any matchup for the Packers. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And speaking of fun, we're up to 40 plus tickets that have been sold on the Seahawks ticket registry to other Seahawks fans. Please make sure to keep spreading the word about this. Send them over to hawkblogger.com. You'll find the instructions. There's a blog post about the ticket registry. Sign up as a buyer or as a seller. There's, I think, over 70 tickets available right now, and they're all at face value essentially or less. And consider that also you're not paying any fees. I'm not charging for this service. I'm just trying to make sure we get as many Seahawks fans in there as possible. So like the $70 additional fees that you have to pay from buying these on a third-party broker site, you don't have to pay those either. So buy these seats. Like, there should be 0 seats available on my registry because they are the best priced seats around when you consider all the fees that you're not having to pay and the fact that these are other Seahawks fans trying to sell to Seahawks fans. So I'll admit I'm a little bit impatient with I've got hundreds. I've probably got 400 or 500 buyers on the list right now, and I send them these seats multiple times a day. There should be none left. go buy these. Buy these now. Let's get as many Seahawks fans in there as possible. I really want to see that happen. So I'll keep plugging it. Also, I want to thank folks that have chosen to tip me for that service. That is very nice of you to do. Venmoing me for some money as an appreciative gesture. That is super nice. You don't have to pay to be appreciative. If you want to do something that would make me happy, follow me on TikTok at Hawk Blogger. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers so that we can do live shows there as well. I think we're at like 300 or 400 at this point. So, I mean, it's only been open for a couple of days, but would appreciate if you could just take a second and follow me at TikTok at Hawk Blogger. And obviously give the show a like and click subscribe as well. I would appreciate that. I always do. The other way to be supportive is join at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Get access to the Slack channel where the conversations are going all the time. Also, you get to ask us questions each and every week on Real Hawk Talk, which is the show from last night is up. We had a lot of fun last night with Nathan and Jeff. And I'll tell you what, I've got something pretty fun in store in a couple of weeks for the Thursday night Bears game, the post-game show. A couple things have to come in for that to happen. But if it does, you'll remember that post-game show. I'll tell you that. So a lot of fun things going on. I will be going to the Seahawks facility later today, actually pretty soon after I get off here. We'll talk to Geno Smith, talk to a couple players, talk to Ryan Grubb and Adam Dirty. And there's a lot to cover. I've got some banger questions I'm looking forward to asking those guys. And I've got an article I'm going to be writing about what's going on early downs across the NFL. I think I've done some research and I'm proud of some of the stuff I'll hopefully be able to share, and hopefully people will appreciate and like that. As always, my hawkblogger.com stuff is free. So, I haven't moved to Substack. I might do that at some point to find more revenue streams. Depends on a few other things there. So last thing I'll say is we sold another pair of JK boots this morning. So that's fantastic. Using code HawkBlogger, that person saved 10%. Not only do they save 10%, but they get a chance to be the person who walks away with these Seahawks themed boots that are just absolutely gorgeous. Gray and green and blue with an HB logo. You'll be the only person on the planet that has these boots. And we will be doing at 50 sales, we'll be doing another giveaway to Wildland firefighters. We'll be doing more great things, hopefully giving away some swag. So use code HawkBlogger, buy a holiday gift for somebody that will thank you forever. These are amazing products. They're amazing boots. I love wearing mine, so make sure you do that. Also, make sure you go over to ftnfantasy.com, use promo code HBAM. Get 15% off there. Less than $8 a month is a steal. And I use this throughout the year, even in the off season, look up all sorts of data and stuff around the Seahawks. Yesterday, I was looking up whether or not whether Jordan Love was good in the rain. It's not relevant anymore, but it's not a big deal. I could look it up there. It's the only place I've found where I can do those kinds of splits on the data that they have. So really, really great. I think it won't always be less than $8 a month. So if you want to lock in an amazing price, use that promo code at FTN Fantasy. Use promo code HBAM. I wouldn't be surprised if they raise prices next year. They haven't told me anything, but there's so much goodness there that they're giving away for such a good price. I would not be surprised if they raise it. So lock it in now. Have it all the way through next year. You'll feel a lot better knowing that you've got that price locked in using promo code HBAM. It's also a good gift. Consider it as a gift to somebody else. I think that would be great as well. All right, everybody, that will do it for this episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. It's great to see all of you. There are some super chats. I don't want to forget. I always forget when I have guests that I have super chats. Colin Lundstrom, the super chat says, Sheil is an OG legend. That is absolutely true. Colin is also an OG legend. Really, really appreciate Colin. He is incredibly generous and really has made a difference for me and my family. So I really appreciate you, Colin. PGZ206 gifted 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. PGZ is one of our more generous members. Really appreciate you, man. If you get one of these free memberships, consider giving one, pay it forward. That's how we do it here. Nate Schutz, who has been a member for a long time, he says it can't be understated how much Spoon does. I agree. I don't disagree with anything Sheil said about Carter and Witherspoon. That does not diminish the fact that Witherspoon is incredibly valuable. Like, you can't regret having Devin Witherspoon on your team. You can't regret that. At the same time, if after 5 years, Jalen Carter is still wrecking games the way he is now, then I think you can definitively say Jalen Carter would have been a better pick. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, for positional value and how hard it is to find those kinds of players, that will be true. I'm still not convinced he's the guy that will be this player after year 3, 4, 5. Like, I can absolutely imagine him, especially once he gets his second contract, maybe being the Albert Hainsworth story. Devin Witherspoon, nothing going to stop that kid. Like, he is going to be the Tasmanian devil week in, week out, play in, play out. And you never have to worry about that with him. And I think he'll just get better and better. So we'll see. I certainly don't regret for a second having Devin Witherspoon on the team, but it will be a question that we'll continue to ask. All right, everybody. I am Brian Nemhauser. Follow me on all the places. This has been episode, what is it? 260. What is this episode? This is 260. I want to get this right. 263? 263. We'll go with 263 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Appreciate y'all. Take care.